So a horror takes to a high rise in this sequel with not the best of reputations. So join me as I take a fresh and objective look at Poltergeist 3. The young Carol Ann Freeling has been sent to live with her aunt and uncle in their Chicago high-rise residence after a series of haunting events. However, Reverend Kane, the evil power behind the paranormal encounters that have plagued Carol Ann, has finally returned to take the young girl into his chilling grasp. Trapped in a mirror dimension, Kane begins to terrorize his new family, drawing them further into his terrifying reality. Now only Bruce and Patricia Gardner, alongside the psychic Tangina, can potentially hold the power to rescue their loved ones and thwart this evil once and for all. So the Poltergeist franchise is a very storied one, both with the quality of the films themselves and the behind-the-scenes odysseys that have plagued many of the productions. And the first film is a perfectly fine film that unfortunately it's never really done anything for me, that I didn't grow up on the film to form any kind of sentimentality with it. I didn't see it until I was in my 20s, and I've only seen the film twice, and just where it is, it doesn't do much for me personally, but I know there's a very passionate fan base out there for it, and I don't really have anything really against it. But second film in the franchise is one at the time of doing this video, I haven't actually gotten through watching the whole film yet to really form an overall opinion on it. But I've heard a lot of things about how there's been a lot of studio meddling with that film to cut out a whole bunch of footage to make it a very incoherent type of film. But after hearing some very good word of mouth about the third film in the franchise earlier this year, I decided to check it out, and lo and behold, I found it to be a pretty good film that's not without many of its own flaws, due to both the constraining budget compared to its predecessors, and some very unfortunate things that happened during production and the inevitable reshoots on this film. But Poltergeist 3 is directed by Gary Sherman, who also was co-writing it with Brian Taggart, and executive produced the film as well. And he adds a lot of interesting, different type of things to this film that really make and have a lot of good, admirable qualities to it. One of the most impressive things about Poltergeist 3, in my opinion, is definitely the effects work in this thing, and that he strives so much with this film to do very practical in-camera effects to make everything look as good as it possibly could, and use a lot of very interesting, innovative, and inventive type of things to utilize a lot of great mirror gags in the film. And I am the guy who absolutely loves a good mirror gag, and this is a film that's chock full of them to amazing great effect too, that you will see in this film that it does so many great camera movements, so many different tricks and illusions with mirrors in it. And you'll notice that a lot of times there are shots in the film where you would expect for the camera to just show up in a reflection, but a lot of times they used and built reverse sets, so you'd have body doubles and exact mirrored sets and everything, so you could make these amazing camera movements and have a lot of great freedom with the cinematography, where you don't have to keep dodging and angling away from the mirrors. And they do some very highly impressive work executing that illusion overall, because you've seen it in a lot of other TV shows and movies where they try to do that, where you have the regular actor there, then you have his stand-in, his double there, trying to kind of sync up their movements, and usually there's always a little bit of thing where they're not entirely in sync, where you can kind of see that it doesn't quite work well. This film is almost completely seamless in the execution of that illusion. I was deeply impressed with the hard work they must have gone into choreographing those movements in such an amazing type of fashion. Really damn good work there, but there's also many other effects in this film that just stand out as very impressive too. That you've got the one part in the film where Carol Ann goes up to the mirror, and then the hands pop out from the mirror and she gets lifted up off the floor. That effect was achieved reportedly because the mirror itself is on sort of a motorized track where it lifted her up off the floor to achieve that illusion and everything. So Gary Sherman used a lot of inventive stuff to really make all these very good type of effects in the film work. All these spooky, creepy type of things with the mirrors and everything work so damn well. Just what he does to achieve that with his own effects team was really well impressive. And the only visual effect of the film, reportedly, is the lightning striking the Hancock Center at the end of the film. So everything else is in camera. And it's very impressive that they achieved this without doing a single optical composite or any kind of split screen type of work. It's very impressive what they do, and that adds to a lot of the creepy type of things in the film overall that Gary Sherman, in my opinion, does a fairly good job directing the film and giving a lot of good atmosphere overall. I think the film has some very good cinematography that uses a lot of great lighting schemes where you see the rays of light bouncing off the mirrors and everything, just the sort of otherworldly type of quality that you did see a lot in the first film. So it's kind of keeping a certain a visual language consistency that has gone through the franchise up to this point to really kind of do something that feels familiar in a certain way. So the cinematography really does stand out very well in a lot of cases, especially when you're just dealing with all the, again, the mirror gags and all that type of stuff. It really creates a very interesting visual to the whole film, just a surreal type of quality in a lot of cases that just because the tricks they're using and the cinematography at hand, it just adds a certain quality of the film that just is very odd in a certain way, but it's also very compelling and intriguing into my eyes. But you also get a lot of just very good creepy type of stuff beyond that. Like, there's just one great scene after the characters of Donna and Scott have been sucked into the other realm. How they come back is very interesting in that you see Scott just burst out of the frozen pool and just he's covered with all this frost and everything. But definitely when Donna comes back and you see the character of Tangina get fried, she crawls right out of Tangina's corpse in the film, and it's just a very unsettling, creepy type of visual. But just like, there's certain effects in the film that just work very well, even though they probably don't have the top-notch budget to get the very best quality out of everything. The concepts and the general execution, I think, are very, very good. But this film is supported by an excellent cast, in my opinion, because everyone in this film just looks really damn good in a lot of ways. That, of course, you've got Heather O'Rourke here, who, unfortunately, the sad thing was that during production, she was suffering from a certain illness that went misdiagnosed, and as things went along after they finished principal photography and months later wanted to go into reshoots, her misdiagnosis turned into a terminal situation, and she passed away on February 1st, 1988. And that was a very sad thing because she shows an enormous amount of talent in this film that just watching her in this film, just from a few scenes, you can just see so much of a great maturity in her talent with this film that she handles everything like a very seasoned actress in this thing, that she seems like she's been working in film for like 20 years the way she handles this film. Everything she does. I mean, obviously, she's very sweet and endearing in this film as the character of Carol Ann, whose name gets repeated 121 times in this film, and you get kind of sick of it after a while, but you don't get sick of this character and this performance because she's just so very good in this film. I just thought everything she did really just engaged the audience, really connected with it. Just, like I said, so much dimensionality and soul and heart in what she does in this film. I think she just makes this a great character to really latch onto, that you follow this character throughout the entire franchise at this point, where you connected with her very strongly through all these films, and just at this point she just pays it off so very well with her performance and everything else that the story does to give her to kind of just wrap herself around in a very good fashion to show the fear with everything, how she's just frightened at certain moments in time, and just like handles everything on just such a weighty type of level that I think she could have been a major blockbuster talent if she had not passed away at this young age. That if she went on another 10, 20, 30 years, I think she could have been an amazing, incredible talent in Hollywood. But sadly, she passed away at this very young age, and we only got a few films from her, but you can enjoy them because she was such a fantastic talent and showed so much potential and promise and delivered on a good deal of it here. But We got Tom Skerritt again in this Forever Horror Month. I've talked about him in The Dead Zone, and here he has a much bigger role in the film. And man, is he damn charming in this film as Bruce. This guy is he just grabs you by the heartstrings in this film. That every single moment that he has opposite Heather O'Rourke in this film, you just feel such a great warmth between these two. That there's a great chemistry there. You just feel so much love between the two characters in this film. There's just such a great bond between them that Tom Skerritt's character Bruce, he's not a familiar relation, blood relation to her, but he just connects so deeply with her that he's just so charmed and endeared by the character of Carol Ann that you just see a great bond that forms between them. That he's not really a believer in all this supernatural, psychic type of stuff, but he just loves this girl, this little girl and everything. That's his niece, and just like he connects with her so well in the film, you just feel with this character that he portrays in the whole film that he's motivated all the way through to make sure that she is safe and rescued, and he's great in the film. He's absolutely fantastic in the film. He still shows a lot of great intelligence with his performance. He's always showing a lot of different things subtly in his performance to just show that this is a guy who thinks when he's acting. That there's a lot of great things that Tom Skerritt does as an actor, and just shows another side of him that is very charming and endearing, and overall just a fantastic performance that he puts on throughout the whole film. And I really like how the film progresses his character overall. That, like I said, starts out as this guy who just doesn't believe in this psychic, paranormal type of stuff. But as he begins to witness more and more unexplainable phenomena, he certainly begins to believe it enough to trust in the right people, such as Tangina, who has all the right answers, while the character of Dr. Seaton, who comes off as a straight-up smug asshole, trying to convince everyone that it's all this post-hypnotic suggestion type of stuff, that Carol Ann is manipulating people into believing all this type of stuff. That guy gets pushed aside, and the character portrayed by Tom Skerritt goes with the person that he really trusts the most, that he feels the most compelling thing towards. That Dr. C is not really doing anything to help the situation. Tangina is someone who's trying to push the situation forward towards some sort of resolution overall. So you get Tom Skerritt just putting in a very dimensional type of interesting performance here that I think he handles with absolutely effortless talent. And of course, we've got Nancy Allen here, who many people would know from the RoboCop films. And she portrays Patricia Gardner here, who is the wife of Bruce, mother of Donna, and the aunt of Carol Ann here, who has a very interesting thing going on in the film, in that Patricia's the character who really is a pretty good mother. But she definitely feels overburdened by taking on Carol Ann into their family. And so it's this very interesting thing where Patricia, the one who's the blood family relative, doesn't really want her around, feels very just wants to get rid of her. She feels like Carol Ann's just going to be this terribly troublesome child that's going to cause a lot more grief from than necessary, while the one who is not the blood family relative in form of Bruce absolutely adores her. And so you get this friction, this whole thing throughout the whole film, where she just wants to get rid of her, just doesn't want to deal with her anymore. That she just becomes too much of a problem overall. But the film has a certain arc for her in a certain way that I don't feel is terribly well handled. But I'll get into that a little later on. But just the fact that I think Nancy does a good performance in the film that has some interesting, a little bit more harsher, less endearing qualities about her, but I think she still does a very fine performance. That you do get some moments throughout the whole film between her and Tom Skerritt, and you just see a little that loving relationship between a wife and a husband and all, that just does sell things very well between them. They have very good chemistry. They just lock in and click very, very well. And this was the feature film acting debut of Lara Flynn Boyle, who does a very good job in this film as the character of Donna. That she just has a very nice quality about her overall, that you do see some bonding between the characters of Donna and Carol Ann, that Carol Ann just kind of allows her to go off and party with her friends throughout the night and everything to cover for her. So nice dynamics. It's not like this, again, not like the character portrayed by Nancy Allen, who's a little bit more abrasive towards that. All the rest of the members of the family really do care for her and bond with her. They have a very good rapport with Carol Ann, so
Laura Flynn Boyle just does a very good job, and there's even moments where she's just absolutely hysterical in the film in terms of just the fear and everything that she's gone through, these traumatizing events, but there's also very interesting turns that the film takes with the character that don't entirely pay off. But again, another thing I'll get to in just a minute or two, but a couple other people in the cast, like the actor who portrays Dr. Seaton, definitely comes off as a smug asshole, but I'm sure that's entirely what they intended with the character, because he's always this guy trying to poke holes in everyone, trying to prove everyone wrong, but he's not really offering up solutions in the film. So he's kind of this guy that could have been a good guy if he was a little bit more of a compassionate doctor instead of this guy who's kind of full of himself and arrogant. But he makes for a guy that you kind of want to see get his comeuppance, but he's not a terrible guy overall. And also you get, returning to the cast, you get Zelda Rubenstein as the character of Tangina, and not really had much of an affinity for in the franchise. I really didn't much care for her in the first film, and this film, she's a little better, but I just don't think she's that terribly good of an actress overall. That there's some moments here where she's kind of stiff, or she's a little bit over the top with some of her line deliveries. I just feel like not the most talented actor to have in the role, but obviously a lot of people just have a lot of sentimentality about the character, so I'm just going to leave it at that. And talking about some of the things I feel do and also don't work so well in the film overall, that the thing I really do like about the film that really doesn't go nearly far enough with the concept is that whole sort of dark reflection, that mirror dimension that this film is completely prevalent with, that there's like another world on the opposite side of that mirror that is a dark reflection of everything else on this side of the world. And just like, it's such a good concept that has moments where it just like introduces a great idea and then doesn't go anywhere with it, like when you get the doppelgangers of Scott and Donna showing up in the film. Doesn't get followed up at all. That's the first and last time you see it in the film. It's like, first time I watched, it's like, that is such a great idea. That if this film goes along and does something great with that, this could be awesome and creepy and as hell. And then it doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't get followed up at all. You never see the mirror dark versions of these characters ever again. So it's like, good idea, doesn't go anywhere. So why is it there in the first place? I don't really know. Maybe there was, because there are a number of scenes that were written and not shot, or things that were shot and deleted from the film. Some stuff that was fairly inconsequential, some stuff that added a little bit extra to the film. But just like, that's always a great concept that I just have yet to see a film or anything else really push that concept to its fullest extent. I think that would just be a creepy addition to this film if it really followed through on it fully, but unfortunately it did not. And one of the main things that really kind of impacts the effectiveness of the film, because the character of Reverend Kane in this film was portrayed in the second film by the creepiest hell Julian Beck, who unfortunately, when he took on the role, was already diagnosed with stomach cancer and died shortly after the film was completed. And so you can't bring him back. He's passed away, like many people have unfortunately done in the course of this franchise. But he's what I know about Julian Beck, because I saw him in the season 2 premiere of Miami Vice, and the few minutes of screen time in that episode, he is creepy as living hell, and just in a Miami Vice episode. Think of him playing a horror movie villain. The guy was, the few bits I've seen from Poltergeist 2, creepy as living fucking hell. And it just loses something in this film. And you got some sort of body double stand-in with some sort of prosthetics on his face that really don't kind of have him resemble Julian Beck very well, with that very sunken look and that creepy visage overall. It just loses something overall. It just feels a little, unfortunately, cheap, because what else are you really going to do about it? If you're going to bring the character back, you have to follow up with the storyline. What else are you really going to be able to do with the whole thing? But just like, it's one of those little things in the film. It's like, there's not much you can do about it, but it just affects the film overall, that you just don't get that presence. You don't get that creepy factor overall with it. And one scene in the film that I just didn't feel like really did anything is when the characters of Bruce and Patricia get transported into the mirror frozen parking garage and everything. You got them being run down by ghost cars, whatnot. Just like, it doesn't really do anything for me. Might have been thought it was a good concept when they came up with it, but just like, I feel like this film, if it did have more resources to pull on with its budget and a little bit more wilder imagination to be able to realize that type of thing, I think they could have come up with something that was a lot more fascinating and visually interesting. It just seemed like a kind of a flat sequence that really kind of it's probably just there in general to kind of create this false sense of security for those two characters, thinking they defeated Kane when they really haven't, to kind of give a reprieve, even though audience probably realizes that's really not the climax and end of the film. So I don't think it was a very good sequence that really kind of achieved anything overall that really aided the film in terms of any kind of spooky or scary factor or any kind of great narrative execution overall. So there's a few things like that, and like I said, there was a lot of problems with the production in a certain way, and there were reshoots done, and they didn't. There's a couple of conflicting stories. Either A, special effects in the original editing that they shot weren't fantastic, and they felt they were kind of weak, and they just weren't going to work very well on film, so they would reshoot it later on, or that the studio got a PG rating from the film and wanted to up the kind of graphic quality of the film and try to push it to a more of a PG-13 or whatnot rating, and reshoot the ending of the film with more graphic visuals or something like that. But let's just say Heather O'Rourke passed away before they could do the reshoots on the ending that they wanted to do. So there's two different endings of the film. The original ending has never been released in any type of fashion, but there's been script excerpts and various other things in terms of production photos and storyboards and various other things that have been able to allow certain people to piece together what the original ending was, which generally had most of the same elements overall, but a little bit more elaborate, where the character Patricia, she would go into the frozen apartment after all this type of stuff had happened and confront the character of Kane, but the characters of Bruce and Carol Ann and Donna and Scott would all be frozen right in front of her on the ground, apparently dying and whatnot. So it'd be a little bit more elaborate type of sequence, and the way they would dispatch of Kane in the film was a little bit more fantastical instead of what we ultimately got in the film, which I think the ending of the film that we got is a little abrupt in a certain way. There's something about it just doesn't quite fit very well for me, because apparently the whole idea going into the whole thing is that the only way they can bring all these people back from this mirror dimension or whatnot, take them back from Kane's grasp, is that if there's someone anchoring them on the other side that really does love them, and that ends up being the character Patricia. But you've seen throughout the whole film, even a few minutes prior to this, that she's had a great aversion. She just pretty much wants to up and abandon Carol Ann up to a few minutes before all this stuff happens. Then she's professing her deep love for her and everything. So it's like, it doesn't feel like a very organic type of progression for the character to make the ending sell as strong as it possibly can be. And just how at the end of the film you just have Tangina and Kane just kind of walk off into the light, and it's just like, it feels a little anticlimactic to me. Like, you want this creepy ass character that's terrorizes people throughout the whole film, and even the previous film too, to really have much more of a comeuppance and everything. You don't want to just see them walk off into the light and it's like, oh well, now they're all at peace. You don't want that for a horror character. You don't want that for a horror villain. You don't want that for a guy who's terrorized people and tried to kill people and all this type of stuff throughout the whole film. You want to see something that's more satisfying than that. I just feel like the ending of this film just kind of just didn't quite hit it on the money, but anything else they might have wanted to do probably was a little bit hampered by the fact that they didn't have their main franchise star available to them anymore to really kind of do anything more elaborate. But I don't know. Just the fact that anything we got just feels a little weak in places and doesn't feel as organic and flowing, where you got the character Bruce, who's been that deeply loving character throughout the whole film throughout his entire family. If it was him that was fighting for them to come back, having him be the anchor, that would progress a lot more naturally throughout the whole film, because he's been that character who's deeply loved every single member of this family throughout the whole film. So it just feels a little like it doesn't fit as well as it possibly could be. And whatever the case, Poltergeist 3 is a film that cost $10.5 million and got back $14.1 million at the box office, so it really wasn't a notable success. However, despite a lot of the flaws that I pointed out here with Poltergeist 3, I still think it's a decent horror film that, this is again, an objective, fresh point of view with someone that doesn't have a great connection with the previous films, that viewing it as its own standalone film, knowing a little bit of the backstory with the previous films to kind of aid in knowing where the story's been up to here, to be able to follow what's going on, I do think Poltergeist 3 is a decent horror film that is not great. Like I said, plenty of flaws that I feel just kind of were attributed to a lot of the budget constraints and certain other things. Passing of Heather O'Rourke in a very untimely fashion to cause a lot of things that just didn't work very well for it. That because she passed away, the studio was very conflicted about the marketing of the film, that they didn't want to seem like they were trying to exploit the film at her passing or whatnot. So it was like Nancy Allen and Tom Skerritt were instructed not to talk about the film in interviews, so the promotion of the film probably wasn't very strong to really kind of pull people towards it, because it was a very complicated type of thing afterwards that director Gary Sherman really didn't want to go ahead and start doing more of the film. He wanted to shelve it after she passed away, but the studio was going to get it done, have all these reshoots done regardless of whether he was going to be involved with it or not. So he ended up doing it regardless. So just like a lot of conflict after that happened, and just kind of didn't go anywhere. It just put out in theaters probably as quietly as possible, and just had very negative reviews. Obviously didn't get very good box office, and has been very much a very strongly panned film by majority of film lovers and everything. People who have enjoyed the beginning of this franchise and not viewed the sequels in any good light whatsoever. But again, looking at it as a fairly standalone film, I think it's pretty good. I think it has, again, some good creepy imagery. The whole mirror illusions and all those tricks used just add a certain creepy factor to the film. Some very good sort of startling visuals and a lot of other things. Just, it's got good ideas and some good execution of it too, that it's not, like I said, not the best film they possibly could have made. More budget, could have been better quality film, or regardless of anything else, just like, again, it's not one place's fault. You can't just pinpoint one thing. There's a whole slew of different things that went to not making this the best film it possibly could have been, but I still think it's a decent film. If you've not seen it in a long time, I would probably suggest just going and watching it again and giving it a fresh, fair take. If you've never seen it before, I would definitely suggest go check it out. And just let me know, what do you guys think of Poltergeist 3 in general? And I know we've had the remake this year, and I haven't had the predilection to go check it out, but something you guys can go check out, that the fantastic guys at Radiodrome, the awesome internet radio podcast or radio show, did a full franchise retrospective prior to the release of the remake this year. You can go listen to Josh Hadley, Cecil Trachtenberg, and Peter go tackle all the films in this franchise, including the in-name only television series Poltergeist The Legacy, in fantastic fashion, because it was their episode on that whole franchise that really got me interested in checking out Poltergeist 3. So highly endorse you guys go checking that stuff out. And my mouth's getting dry, so forgive me if I'm stuttering or whatnot. But let's just say, if you guys have any thoughts about Poltergeist 3, I'd definitely like to hear what you guys think about it. Like I said, not a great film, definitely flaws, but it has some decent, admirable qualities and some very good effects work and some very solid cast members that bring a lot of good qualities forward in a film that really fell short of its overall potential. But post comments if you enjoyed what the video had to offer you guys. Thumbs up is always appreciated. And spreading links around and all that kind of stuff, and hooking up with me on social media is always cool. And thanks guys for watching. Still more stuff in Forever Horror Month coming up. Another very troubled horror franchise sequel that I'm hoping to get around to watching, because a couple of different versions of that film to watch ahead of it. because I bought the Blu-ray box set of the Halloween franchise, and I think maybe you could figure out exactly which one I'm very hot on checking out here. But gonna be checking that out, and hopefully the grand conclusion will be an absolute horror classic from the early 70s that I've done a review of one of its sequels already a couple years ago, so you can figure that out too by checking out the back catalog of Forever Horror Month reviews, and working very diligently. And of course, Subspecies 2 and 3 will be coming up probably sometime next week, and close out that, and maybe find time for one or two other good videos. So thanks for watching, guys. Get some other stuff out for you very soon, but until then, thanks for watching. Enjoy some very good spooky horror this month, and take care, guys. See you later. Bye bye.